Writing lyrics for me is although I write whenever. I'll sit down and just write random stuff, and like I said, I keep notebooks scattered about. But generally, when I'm writing songs, it's more of a, I don't know what they call it, like a tone poem or some shit. Like you kind of hear this melody, you hear the sound of it in your head that goes with the riff, and then I start to like decipher it into words. Like, okay, well that sound would sound like this word, and then I kind of cook it down and cook it down and cook it down until finally the words seem right to me. It's much the same way that you would write a riff, except it's just, I don't know, you just kind of take them out of thin air.
It's tricky stuff to talk about a little bit because you can, because it's, on one hand it's so personal, and on the other hand, you know, there's a lot of things that work, you know, when you're approaching writing lyrics, you know, whether, you know, it'd be listening to 60s and 70s music that's about feel good and being happy, or you know, protest songs, or you know, modern, you know, death metal and black metal, where there's a lot of just very darkness, and you know, maybe on one side of it it's like gore and brutality, on the other side it's like dark spiritual essence, and all this stuff that's all good. You know, it's all good in its own way, and there's people that are better at it than others, and that we all probably have those records in our collections, and you know, I think, and I love it all. And you know, when it comes to writing lyrics for me, I'm just, you know, I'm not, my favorite artists, when I watch them perform, are people that are so there and so present and so open that it's almost like they have something to lose, you know? They're putting themselves out there so much, there's nothing to hide behind. It's not entertainment anymore. You know, it's not a cool club, it's not a look, it's not a, you know, it goes beyond lifestyle, it goes beyond everything, and becomes like this crux of human experience that can be made new over and over and over again, because we actually all live it every single moment, and are trying to get a relationship to it in our own way, moment to moment to moment. And so for me, it's just about just being really present, and sometimes that truth is open. Sometimes that truth is maybe the closest that I've ever been to being awakened or ascended in some way that goes beyond where I've come from. Sometimes it's very depressed and hurt, and you're trying to process that, and if you're being honest, then you just can't worry about what anybody thinks about it. It's part of your path as a writer. And so to not get overly intellectual about it, to me, I just have to write about the things that feel the most true to me. The most true, and even if it's a transient truth, it's still what's true in that moment. And so then, and sometimes if I'm in the process of writing songs, sometimes they take a while. And so I'll look at that lyric that I wrote 3 months earlier, and I have a new insight on it, and it hasn't been put into tape yet. And so I'll change it to fit with the time, or whatever it is. And then sometimes you'll play songs that you wrote in like a moment of utter despair, that sometimes I've chosen just not to even play those songs anymore, because I'm so far past it. Or I don't need to go there anymore. You know, that hurts to go to, and I don't want to reopen that wound over and over and over again. That was a part of a process in healing. So it's, lyrics are tricky things, you know.
I'd just say also with that, it's the same thing. Like, it's one of the reasons that Neurosis doesn't play a lot of the songs that we've written is because they're just not playable. We do it, we work through it, and that's it. It's just, you know, there's only so far you can go, honestly. You could take it to a certain point, but if you keep pounding your head into it over and over, you can put yourself in some really kind of dangerous places. And Neurosis has always been, I don't know what the word for it is. A lot of people say dark. I don't really see it as dark. I see it as, you know, our reflection of our reality. But we learned the hard way that when you write a record like Through Silver and Blood, given the times that we were living through at that moment, and then you go on tour for 2.5 years and you play it every night, you do it 800 times, it doesn't leave you in a very good headspace. And it makes life very difficult, and not just for you, but for everyone around you, you know? Like you said, it's serious shit. There's fucking lyrics carry a lot of weight, and they are strangely, I can remember so clearly one day, all of a sudden, all these lyrics that I had written made perfect sense to me when I never knew what any of them meant. You know, I had been singing these lyrics for years, and they were just super ambiguous, and they just seemed like the right words. And then one day it was as if they'd been translated to the language that I spoke, and all of a sudden it was just laid out in front of me. You know, they definitely are very tricky.
Something else I want to add to that really quick. The other thing about lyrics for me is I want them to be inclusive and not exclusive. There's nobody here but us chickens, you know. I don't want to be, you know, art for me actually this music gave me a vehicle to actually connect to people. Before I had music, I didn't know how to do it. And so when I'm working through stuff and working through and writing lyrics, I mean, sometimes I'll dig into stuff that, for me anyway, it's different for everybody, but it's maybe be really hard stuff to write about, really difficult, painful things. But I always kind of want to have this moment of positivity and clarity and connection and growth and all the stuff that you can kind of get ridiculed for, but it's like, to me, that's the only game that matters, you know, is like growing, you know, finding some sense of peace, you know, in this world. And that's part of the path for me. And when people come and see Yob, I don't want you walking out being just utterly drained, you know. I mean, and if you are, you know, have your experience. Everybody has their experience. It's okay, but I do want to feel like it's an environment that we're sharing, you know, because that's the actual truth of it. You know, it's an environment that we were all sharing and creating, and there shouldn't be any separation. You know, I don't want there to be.
I totally admire that, and I think it's the higher path, and it's not the path that we took for a long time, because we honestly just went to bludgeon the shit out of people for years. I'm not even kidding. I mean, we had the worst intentions for a long time, you know. It's not good. It's not good, you know. It just was what it was. It was just, we just were. It's just the chemistry of the band, you know. And I wrote a couple of songs on my last solo record that actually had that energy in it, that positive feeling came through me for the first time ever in my life. I wrote songs that had this representation of something in my life that wasn't reflective of my, you know, my depression or my reflections on death or my, you know, my scars of the past. And it was actually about, you know, people that I cared about and my feelings towards them, and it was those songs that meant so much to me. I can't even really put it into words. So I really do admire that and think it is absolutely the higher path and something to aspire to.
Yeah, Scott. Curiosity about Through Silver in Blood, about the lyrics, because we were talking.
I'm not going to talk about it.
Okay. Can I use it?
Okay. So, Scott, you sometime at a solo gig, you've expressed that certain songs you feel a certain anxiety to present them because they're so up close and personal. Is that anxiety when you wrote those songs more dependent on the vessel which you're presented with, like either Neurosis or solo, or just the content and the feeling of the song itself? If that makes any sense.
I think it did. I'll try to answer. You tell me. I think that I think that I feel way more open and unprotected in the doing the solo stuff than I do when I'm able to hide behind the wall of sound and Neurosis. And I also think that the solo stuff has kind of brought out a different. There is a difference, is somewhat in how the lyrics come about, and the need for the lyrics to kind of tell a story legibly in those songs that makes them a little bit more literal, a little bit more difficult to be evasive about, you know. I didn't mean to be rude, by the way, to you, man. I definitely ask me another question in a second, but I would just say I'm not going to answer questions about what we may or may not have been going through or what those lyrics mean or anything, because honestly, I don't really know. And secondly, I'm just not gonna, because there's private shit.
But I wasn't going to ask that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to shut you down like that. I get like that sometimes.
But Scott, it was really about something else.
Okay, so say. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
In the outro, when Steve is singing "Don't Crawl, Sick is Born a War," you're singing something else at some point, or not?
I have no idea. I really don't. I don't even remember what Steve was saying. So it very well could have been gibberish, like nonsense, because I do that all the time.
All right.
Yeah, a question connects to one of the earlier questions about song length and structure. Is that something that you finalize by yourself, or does that come together when you meet the band or the other guys?
When I write songs, I have I'm really concerned with, you know, there being a flow to them, and there being a sense of dynamics that, you know, I've always kind of felt like if Yob is even really a doom metal band, really, if we are, then we're doomed for ADD, you know, because I need things to change and shift and build and grow and release and, you know, do all sorts of different things. And so when I'm writing those sorts of things, and I have certain kind of, I guess, almost formulas that I like, where there's intros and then there's a build to a main riff that eventually then goes to different places. But, you know, when I come up with, I don't relate to, like, for me personally, I don't relate to just a riff, because, I mean, there's always scenarios, there's someone that can do something that's supposedly not supposed to work and make it work beyond the beyond, so I'm not here to say what's right or wrong, it's just for me. For me, a riff isn't enough. For me, it's a collection of feelings that build and go different places. That's what works for me. And so when I get a collection of things that I feel like work, then I'll bring that to band practice, and I'll be like, look, here's a collection of things, and there's a vision and idea, and then my bandmates become kind of the truth sayers. And if we are jamming on something together and we come up with this thing and we're jamming like demons all by ourselves, then we know we have something. If it's something that just is like we're banging our head against the wall, I mean, I just don't think it should be that hard of work. You know, I mean, really, if it's not natural, if it doesn't feel natural, then it's not cooked enough yet. You know, it's still hard pasta. It's not going to stick to the wall. You know.
How do you go about bringing collaborators into the process of like band writing? I think like the Java album, for instance, or other collaborations.
I don't know, you know, there's just ideas, you know. I mean, the Jarbo record was, you know, we'd become friends. We were, I think we talked kind of right off the bat about maybe doing something someday. And then, if I remember correctly, it came at about the time that we pulled back from our, 230 or 40 gigs a year schedule and decided that we were going to go home for a while and focus on starting a label and focus on our music and our children and then I think that we decided, well, this would probably be a good time to do that record. And, you just play who you want to play with. When Mike asked me to sing on their record, of course, said I would do it. It's the same with the Mastodon records. They're friends of mine, and they, every time they're like, oh, I got this song, we think you should sing it. And so they send it to me, and I'm like, okay, well, let me hear it. And then I hear it, I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I like it, so. And if, like Mike said, the words come easy, then I know that it's the right tune, and just stay open to it. There's a lot of it going on right now in my world, that's for sure. It's just been swirling.
Do you actually get asked to do a lot of collaboration work?
I get asked to do a lot of guest stuff, quite a bit. The Corrections House thing was like a completely bizarre, accidental collaboration, really, where we were just, me and Bruce and Mike were going to go on this tour doing our solo shit, and we were trying to work out a song for the end of the night, and then Bruce was like, hey, what if Sanford got involved? And I'm like, all right, well, what's he going to do? And Sanford answered with an email with these 3 loops. And he's like, what do you think about this? And I was like, fuck, I can do a bunch of shit over that. So I recorded, we ended up with 3 songs, and we had a band. It was literally like that. So it was nothing that we even thought about. Shrinebuilder kind of came about differently. That was something that Alan Wino had talked about for years and years, and finally came to fruition. And Al and Chris at the time, because Chris was still in Ohm, stopped by my house and fucking dropped that bomb on me, which was, yeah, you could have fucking knocked me over with a fucking feather when they asked me if I wanted to be in that band. Like, yep. What do you say to that question? It was ridiculous. I was in shock. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of that going on.
Do you guys ever have a set theme in mind before you start recording an album?
I don't. I just, I think that sometimes I have had songs and lyrics where when I've sat with them for a while, then I realized that I was kind of off base personally. Like, just when I looked at this stuff, I was like, yuck, I need to slow down for a second and take a look, I've had that happen, but as far as like, having a particular theme or something where like, oh, I want this to be a concept record or something like that, I've never approached it like that. I just try to stick with what I know is what's true in the moment, and then try to dig a little deeper into it. That's it. For me.
Yeah, same. Never done a concept record. I wouldn't really know how to. I don't think, because to me, it's kind of like the whole thing's kind of a concept. The whole idea, everything, this whole thing is one giant. Just continuous movement. It's just the next group of songs that fill a CD or don't, make a 7-inch or whatever. It's just the next songs. Every time it's just the next songs that happen. And it's really, that's it. It's just simple.
Have your travels around the world affected your songwriting at all? You've maybe played in Japan or Australia, like Europe now, obviously, but from the West Coast, has that those travels affected your songwriting?
You know, I think you know, it's weird doing some of this stuff all these years later when, you know, just when Yob started, just, you know, at least from where I was from, there were just so few people that were interested in what I was doing, or what the music that I was into, and I didn't know very many people that knew the bands that I knew, whether it be Cathedral or Revelation or, you know, early Wretched or, you know, The Obsessed or whatever. These were just very, very unknown things. And so as time went on and I started to realize how there are these little patches of global communities that were into those same kind of things, and we started connecting and pen paling and sending CDs back and forth and whatnot, and then just exponentially it's grown so much over the last couple of decades. You know, and I get very encouraged and influenced by that, and then there's just this incredible sea of music that is being made, and so I think to some degree I'm definitely influenced by that. And that being the case has really enabled my band to actually be able to come here. You know, it's enabled our band to do these things, so I think there is kind of a symbiotic relationship there as far as, and then being able to be turned on to bands that, you know, occasionally you see a band that just makes you stop in your tracks and forget everything that you thought you knew, and that band can come from anywhere in the world. And so I think on some level that's also the case.
I think that the overall experience of travel, you know, changes your perspective on everything. I know that most of the people that I know, most of my friends, most people I grew up with, have never seen these places that I've seen, and they're really, really jealous of it, you know. And in some ways, you know, they just, you know, they would like to see them. Then again, of course, except for an opportunity like this, Roadburn, where you kind of get to go and sit and be with people for a few days, typically tour means you go to the city, you go to its shittiest neighborhood, and you sit in a backstage room covered in flying dicks and balls. So that influences you on a whole other level. Because that's honestly what it's about, you know, and that's what you fucking do most of the time. So, you know, you don't get to see a whole lot of stuff. A lot of people be like, oh, you know, have you ever seen this or that? I'm like, no, because, you know, we had electricity problems all day and we couldn't get the shit to work. And so, you know, the first time I went to Rome, I saw a BP station. So it's just, I wish for more. I would love to immerse myself into a lot of the cultures of the places that I've been. Particularly places like Japan, Australia, Greece, you know, so many places in Europe. I would love to take time to sit there, to be there, to really try to understand how things are, and to not just be tearing through, you know, marauding on our way to the next town, you know, because that's just always the way it is. So. Yes, but
It happens more at home.
it happens everywhere. I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of, it's not that it's not so much that. I mean, it's just that it's not. I don't know how much it affects the music. You know, honestly, I think that a lot of bands. Now, if you're talking about bands specifically influencing my music, well, yeah, tons.
It was the travels.
Yeah, the travels themselves are, you know, I'm not that into them, to be honest with you.
you embark, right? Like, I think the best, and once again, there's all sorts of different ways to do it. I think that for me, if I was on the road nonstop, constantly, playing, for me, I think the art sometimes might start to suffer, because I start to suffer, and I think that my best stuff, the stuff that I feel like, when I'm not being the hyper, utter, brutal self-critic that I am, in the moments where I think, that's not so bad, it just comes out of living life, it comes out of living your life, and then you come up with this collection of songs in your life, and then you put those on the road. If you go out there and you start bludgeoning these things, and then the road kind of becomes the hammer, and the club is the anvil, and you start really actually learning these songs, and they do start taking on different flavors, and you start learning more about yourself in them as you play them night after night after night after night. But the travel aspect of it is it's actually one of the hardest parts about doing this kind of stuff. On so many levels, missing your kids, missing your, there's home is important. Having a real home, it's important.
You often have doubts about your songwriting, and if you do, what do you do in terms of when you know a song's finished, and maybe take it to other guys in the band, and then you know it's okay, or do you have doubts that they always remain, or how do you find that now you're more experienced? Do you have less doubts or more doubts?
I think when all of us have this ability, this thing where you want what you do, whatever it is, if it's something that you're passionate about, you want it to be as good as it can be. I think when you're really serious about being an artist, I think if you start thinking in terms of good and bad, other than just what motivates you to create, then that starts getting real tricky. Things can get, for me anyway, I start feeling like maybe I'm getting just a little contrived. And so I guess for me, I always have doubts. Always. I